Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Trump doubled down on his calls for the Republican Party to nationalize voting in the United States, even as the White House tried to walk back his comments. Republican lawmakers also criticized the idea, with Senate Majority Leader John Thune saying, quote, "It's harder to hack 50 election systems than it is to hack one." Speaking to reporters yesterday in the Oval Office, President Trump repeated false claims about the 2020 election and urged the federal government to take over voting in the United States.
If a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, you know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway.
Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution designates individual state legislatures with determining how elections are held. Meanwhile, House Republicans unveiled the Make Elections Great Again Act, calling for voters to present a photo ID and verify their citizenship when registering to vote. It comes as officials in Fulton County, Georgia, promised to take legal action after the FBI last week seized truckloads of ballots and documents, 700 boxes, from the 2020 election. National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard defended her presence at the FBI raid at the Fulton County Election Center, telling Democratic lawmakers she was there to identify possible foreign interference. Gabbard is also facing renewed backlash following reports by the Wall Street Journal that she's allegedly hiding a whistleblower complaint accusing her of wrongdoing. The Journal reported the whistleblower's complaint is so highly classified that it's, quote, said to be locked in a safe, unquote, and it has not been shared with Congress. The whistleblower's lawyer has also accused Gabbard of stonewalling the complaint, which was filed last May. Speaking on Capitol Hill, the brothers of Renee Good urged Congress to restrain President Trump's crackdown on immigration. Brent and Luke Ganger testified at a hearing held by congressional Democrats on Tuesday on the violent use of force by federal immigration agents deployed to cities across the U.S. Brent Ganger read from his eulogy to his sister, saying Good was, quote, unapologetically hopeful. And this is Luke Ganger. He calls his sister Nay, addressing lawmakers on Tuesday.
The completely surreal scenes taking place on the streets of Minneapolis are beyond explanation. This is not just a bad day or a rough week or isolated incidents. These encounters with federal agents are changing the community and changing many lives, including ours, forever.
Not a single Republican lawmaker showed up for the hearing. Among others who testified at the forum Tuesday were Aliyah Rahman, who was violently dragged out of her car by federal immigration officers in Minneapolis, Martin Daniel Ruscon, who was shot by border agents in California while driving his family, and Marama Martinez, who was shot 5 times by a federal immigration agent in Chicago last year. This is Martinez.
At the hospital, I remember seeing multiple agents standing around, watching me be treated for my wounds. My arms, legs, and chest were all wrapped in bandages. I had 7 bullet holes in my body.
Democratic Congressmember Robert Garcia then displayed text by the Border Patrol agent after he shot Martinez.
The agent linked an article about your shooting and texted, read it. 5 shots, 7 holes. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. Oh, well, it is what it is. It happens.
New York Attorney General Letitia James announced Tuesday she'll be deploying legal observers to document federal immigration raids across New York. The move comes as federal immigration agents face mounting scrutiny over excessive use of force in the aftermath of at least 4 fatal shootings since September. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, several people were detained by ICE in Jersey City and Hoboken over the weekend. A video recorded by Jersey City Council member Jake Efros during the arrests has gone viral, in which an ICE agent is heard saying, quote, "I don't need a warrant, bro. Stop getting that in your head. That's it," unquote. President Trump signed the consolidated funding bill hours after it passed the House, ending the partial government shutdown for now. The legislation includes only a 2-week extension of funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Democratic lawmakers are calling for reforms on federal immigration enforcement as part of a deal to negotiate more funding for DHS. In a statement after the House vote, Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said, quote, "Americans from every corner of the country are demanding accountability and an end to the lawless paramilitary tactics that ICE is using in our communities. Absent bold and meaningful change, there's no credible path forward with respect to the Department of Homeland Security funding bill next week," Jeffries said. Colombian President Gustavo Petro sat down with Trump in a closed-door meeting that lasted approximately 2 hours at the White House Tuesday. It was the first face-to-face encounter between the two leaders following months of tension and heated exchanges over the Trump administration's military strikes on civilian boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. Their talks also came a month after the U.S. attack on Venezuela and the abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife in early January. After the White House meeting, Petro shared a photo on social media with a note apparently handwritten by Trump that said, quote, "Gustavo, a great honor. I love Colombia," unquote, with a photograph of the two leaders shaking hands and smiling. Trump took on a drastically different tone after he previously insulted Petro and falsely accused him of being a drug trafficker, threatening Colombia with U.S. military action. Petro spoke after the meeting yesterday.
I told him that between free people, one cannot act under blackmail. Do this or else this happens. No, we do not act under blackmail. And I think the photos and the atmosphere of the meeting show a meeting between equals who think differently. Yes, with different powers, obviously, but capable of finding common paths. That's it, nothing personal. He did not speak to me about his businesses, nor I about mine, which I do not have.
Colombian President Petro traveled to Washington, D.C. on a special visa after the Trump administration revoked his previous one in September when Petro joined a pro-Palestine rally outside the United Nations headquarters in New York and urged U.S. soldiers to disobey Trump. The Trump administration also issued sanctions against Petro and his family in October. We'll have more on this story later in the broadcast. The U.S. military announced it shot down an Iranian drone that approached its aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. It comes as President Trump confirmed the U.S. is currently negotiating with Iran over its nuclear program. Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are expected to meet with the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Istanbul on Friday. We'll have more on this story and the bulletin of concerned scientists saying that the doomsday clock is closer to zero than it's ever been, closer to midnight than it's ever been in history. Israeli airstrikes killed at least 20 Palestinians, including children, across Gaza today. Israel's killed over 500 Palestinians since the U.S. brokered so-called ceasefire went into effect in October. It comes as the Palestinian Red Crescent says the evacuation of patients and wounded Palestinians via the southern Rafah crossing has been canceled for today. Israel's been tightly controlling the Rafah crossing since it partially reopened Monday after 2 years of total closure. On Tuesday, only 5 medical evacuees were allowed to leave, and only 12 Palestinians were allowed to re-enter Gaza from Egypt. 56-year-old Huda Abu Abed was among the few people let back into Gaza after Israel's delayed reopening of the Rafah crossing under last year's ceasefire.
They said the crossing was going to open. You know how long we've been waiting for the crossing to open? Because no matter what, there is nothing like your homeland. It is right there. Everything needed for life is available. Everything is there. But our longing for our country, we can't be distant from it or give it up.
Meanwhile, 2 Human Rights Watch employees have resigned after HRW's leadership blocked a report which called Israel's denial of the right of return for Palestinians a crime against humanity. Omar Shakir, who led the Israel and Palestine team, said in his resignation letter, quote, "The one topic, even at Human Rights Watch, for which there remains an unwillingness to apply the law and the facts in a principled way, is the plight of refugees and their right to return to the homes that they were forced to flee," unquote. To see our interviews with Omar Shakir, you can go to democracynow.org. Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office yesterday, President Trump insulted CNN reporter Caitlin Collins for not smiling as she asked him about Epstein's survivors.
What would you say to the survivors who feel like they haven't gotten justice?
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face.
I'm asking you about survivors.
You know why?
You
know why you're not smiling? Because you know you're not telling the truth. And you're a very dishonest organization, and they should be ashamed of you.
These are survivors of a sexual abuse of health care.
Recently, President Trump called CBS's Nancy Cordes stupid, Katie Rogers from the New York Times ugly. And when Catherine Lucy of Bloomberg News asked him about releasing the Epstein files, Trump told her, "Quiet, piggy." And hundreds of workers at Hearst magazine staged a half-day walkout in New York City to call for a fair contract, protections against AI, better wages, and work flexibility. This comes as management failed to reach an agreement with the union after their contract expired last month. This is Mary Fama, an art director at Cosmopolitan magazine, Cosmo, speaking to Democracy Now!
AI is going to be a problem for writers, for creatives, for a long time, and these are the things that are, we're worried about in the future. So we want these AI protections now to keep us, safe and know that our work is respected here.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.